Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of The Divortorium. My name is Darnay DeVore and I'm going to be your host. On today's episode, we're going to be celebrating Mother's Day. The title is A Mother's Sacrifice. So I want to wish everyone out there first a very happy Mother's Day. Motherhood is beautiful, okay? We can all agree. Motherhood is a wonderful, wonderful institution created by God back in the Garden of Eden, okay? Motherhood is not expendable. Mothers are not expendable, no matter what you may hear out there today. God made mothers and motherhood, it's an irreplaceable part of our civilization. When you take away motherhood, you take away mothers, and you take away mothers, you take away everyone. None of us are here anymore. We can't exist without our mothers. Okay? That's how important mothers are. We cannot put them to the side or take them off the table of importance. They are primary, as are fathers. But today we're going to focus on mothers. When we consider motherhood, there's so much love. There's so much character. All right? There's so much thoughtfulness, but there's also so much sacrifice. That's the painful part of motherhood, is the sacrifice. We're going to look at three mothers today who endured great sacrifice, greater than any of us could ever know. But because they had faith in God, because they served God, their sacrifice created an opportunity. It became a blessing for so many millions and ultimately the entire world. Three mothers. Here's number one. Her name is Jochebed. Okay? Jochebed was a mother of Moses, in case you're not familiar with who she is. She's Moses' mother. And let me give you a little backstory. Okay? This is the time of Egypt. The Hebrews, the nation of Israel, they are slaves in Egypt right now. Okay? They're growing out of control. There's so many of them that the Pharaoh at the time, decided, I'm going to reduce the number. We need to reduce the number of Israelites so they don't overrun us. So let's kill all the baby boys that are born within this time period. Now we'll leave the girls alone, but we'll kill the baby boys. So even Pharaoh knew at that time, you take away one or the other, the male or the female, and you will destroy the entire species. You'll stop them from being able to reproduce. So during this time, Jochebed happened to give birth to her newborn baby Moses. Moses, by this edict from the Pharaoh, should have been killed. Okay? But Jochebed hid her child Moses for about 3 months. Okay? She hid him as best she could. And you know how it is when a baby's newborn, when they're so small that you can hide them with a big coat or a jacket. But as they keep growing, it gets harder to hide them, and they cry more, and they're louder, and they require more attention. So after 3 months, she realized, I can't hide my baby anymore. So she made a basket. Okay, she made a basket and placed Moses, her baby Moses, in this basket, and placed the basket in the reeds of the Nile River. Now, she didn't just place him into the water to go floating off and get hurt. She placed him in the reeds, and the reeds will keep the basket stable so it doesn't just float away. But I think Jochebed had a plan, because coincidentally, she placed him in the reeds on the Nile River near where Pharaoh's daughter bathed herself. So Pharaoh's daughter came across this baby and recognized it immediately as, this is a Hebrew baby. I think Jochebed was counting on the instinctive nature of women to be nurturing, okay, to love and to have compassion for children, for babies, because the Pharaoh's daughter, instead of delivering this baby to her father to be killed, decided, I feel sorry for this baby. What can I do? And then here comes little Miriam. This is Moses' slightly older sister, Miriam. She comes skipping along and says, hey, would you like me to get a Hebrew mother to take care of this baby for you? And Pharaoh's daughter said, sure. So Miriam went to get her own mother, which is also the mother of Moses. Okay. And here comes Moses' mother. And here's what it says. Ephesians 2:9-10. It reads, Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you. So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. So Jochebed ended up getting paid to take care of her own child, Moses. All right. But it came with a condition. After a certain period of time, the Bible doesn't say when, but after a point in time, she was to deliver her baby back to Pharaoh's daughter. And Pharaoh's daughter would adopt Moses as her own. Jochebed wasn't given much of a choice. If she had tried to continue raising Moses on her own, Moses would have been discovered and killed as a baby. The other option was she can continue raising her child for a little while, but then she had to give him up. She gave him up. She sacrificed raising her own son for his sake. So at least she knows her baby boy Moses is still alive, even though he's no longer in her home, but rather in Pharaoh's home. And believe it or not, I believe that Pharaoh didn't end up killing Moses anyway, because he was under the protection of Pharaoh's own daughter. Okay, Pharaoh's own daughter said, no, Dad, this is my son now. This is my son, and thus immune to your order to kill all the Hebrew boys. It was that simple. It was really that simple. So this was a major sacrifice on the part of Moses' mother, Jochebed. Instead of keeping her baby for herself, she gave him up so he could have a better life. So he could actually live, number one, but also have a better life, the best education within the Pharaoh's home, the best food. Moses received the best of everything while living under Pharaoh's roof. Okay, that's very difficult for a mother to do, is to give up their son, period. Okay, but to save his life, what mother would not do that? What mother would not give up their son to save their son's life? Now we have mother number 2. Her name was Hannah. Okay, Hannah was the mother of the prophet Samuel. You'll find this story in 1 Samuel chapter 1 through 1 Samuel chapter 3. Now, Hannah was one of 2 wives that a man had. Now, the other wife, she could have children, everything was good, but Hannah could not. Hannah was barren. So the second wife that could have children, she teased Hannah, she picked on her, she made life very difficult for Hannah, because at that time, motherhood was part of your identity as a woman. If you could not have children, many women felt like they were broken, they were insufficient. They could never be fully female unless they could actually bear a child. So this was during a time when it was very important to have a child, and Hannah, she couldn't have any. So the second wife just teased her mercilessly, and Hannah, it broke her heart. It really shattered her inside. So Hannah prayed, and here was her prayer. 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 11, it reads, and she made a vow, saying, this is Hannah, Lord Almighty, if you will only look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head. Do you see this prayer? Do you understand what Hannah just did? Hannah prayed, just give me a son. Let me be pregnant by my husband. Let me give birth to a son, and I promise I will give him right back to you. She's saying, I will forego all the things that I want to do with my son, like raise him, like watch him grow, like educate him, teach him how to talk and walk, and I'll give up everything because I'm going to give him back to you, Lord. Just let me feel what it's like to be a mother just one time. Just one time. So God gave Hannah a child. Yeah. Hannah got pregnant, and she weaned him, when he was done with the breastfeeding years. She took him to the temple, or the town of worship called Shiloh. This is before the first temple of Israel. But she took him to the worship center for Israel, a town called Shiloh, and she dropped him off with the high priest and said, here you go. God gave me this son, and now, as I promised, I am giving him back to God. I want him to live here and serve in this temple all the days of his life. He is to serve God with you, high priest. That was hard. That was very, very, very difficult, because this is the one child she prayed for. She begged for, okay? And she had to give him up. She had him and then had to give him right up. Folks, that's a sacrifice. That is a huge sacrifice, okay? Now, each year, as Hannah and her family, they went to Shiloh because it was the Israelite tradition to go to Shiloh to offer up their annual sacrifices. Each year, when Hannah and her family did so, she would bring her young son Samuel a robe that she had made. So just imagine a robe for a 2-year-old, and then the next year she'd come back and here's a robe for my 3-year-old, and then the 4-year-old, and then on and on. Every year, she'd never stop bringing a robe for her son Samuel. That's a mother's love. Even though I don't see you all the time, son, I think about you. Okay, I don't forget you. I love you, and I'm going to show it in any way, shape, or form that I can. And if that's just bringing you a robe every year, I will bring you a robe every year. Now, God also, he rewarded Hannah and gave her, believe it or not, 3 more sons and 2 more daughters. Okay, so Hannah got a chance to have the full experience of not just having a child, but raising a child too, all the way through maturity. She finally got that opportunity. But Samuel ended up becoming one of the greatest prophets Israel ever had, thanks to Hannah's sacrifice. All right, Israel needed their prophets badly. The prophet, that was the mouthpiece between Israel and God. Okay, so prophets were very, very important. Samuel became one of the greatest. He was the one who with God's direction, picked out Saul as the first king of Israel. He was also the one that, under God's direction, took the kingdom away from Saul, King Saul, and then chose David to be the next king of Israel, which was the greatest king Israel ever had. So here's the point with Jochebed and Hannah, is that God did more with their children than Hannah and Jochebed ever dreamt possible. They had no idea how much God could do with just those 2. Moses ended up freeing all of Israel from their Egyptian slave owners. Okay, that was huge. Jochebed could never see that. She could never imagine that would be possible through her own son. Okay, Hannah, her son Samuel, became one of the greatest prophets Israel has ever had. Amazing, amazing. We can give them all the love and comfort and care in the world, but only God can give them eternity. Only God can make them immortal in the case of being remembered throughout all ages, right? Because we still remember Moses today, don't we? We still remember the prophet Samuel to this day, don't we? Yeah, these folks will never die in the history of our minds. They are immortal in our civilization because of what God did with them. These are mothers who had to sacrifice what they wanted for what God desired. And God desired to do great things out of these young children that these mothers had and had to sacrifice. There came a point in time where these mothers had to sacrifice. But this kind of sacrifice requires love, strength, and trusting in God. The third mother is Mary, the mother of Jesus. You'll find this story in Matthew 1 and Luke 1. Now, this is a story about an angel that came to the mother Mary. She was a virgin at the time. She was not a mother yet, and told her about her child to be, that her child would be the Messiah. Okay, now let's just go through her response. Mary's response should be an example for all of us. We see this in Luke 1, verse 38, and it reads, "I am the Lord's servant," Mary answered. "May your word to me be fulfilled." Then the angel left her. In other words, Mary said yes. She said yes. When the angel came and told her, your son will be the Messiah, she said yes. Now, Mary was found pregnant, of course, after that, before she ever consummated the marriage with Joseph. They weren't even married yet. Mary and Joseph were engaged to be married, and suddenly she's pregnant. And you got to think, Joseph is sitting there like, okay, I know I haven't touched you yet. We haven't been together yet. What is this here? What is this? And Mary, well, it came from God. And Joseph's got to be thinking, yeah, God, huh? Then Joseph had a dream. The angel came to him in the same dream and explained everything to him. And then that was all she wrote. Joseph was all on board at that point. Here's the challenging part. Mary realized that within her was a baby that was born from God. Okay, she knew that this was going to be the Messiah. If Mary knew what Isaiah 53 read, she could read the life of her son, because Isaiah 53 is an early prophecy regarding Jesus, who he would be, how he would live and die. So if Mary were to take a look at Isaiah 53 and completely understood it at that time, she would have had a great fear. This is my son? Yeah. I mean, how would any of you mothers out there like to have that opportunity? Okay? You know you've got a little boy or a little girl in your womb, but to be able to pick up a book and read about your child's entire life and their death, hundreds of years before your child was even born. That would be weird, wouldn't it? That'd be crazy. But if Mary understood what was in store for her son, she would have had a great fear and she would have cried endlessly. But it's probably a good thing that Mary either did not know or did not understand Isaiah 53. Because once you know everything in Isaiah 53, now you're raising this child of yours, age 2, age 3, age 4, age 10, age 15, but you already know the end of his story. You already know what's going to happen to him. You already know people are going to reject him. They're going to beat him. They're going to spit at him. Okay? You already know what's about to happen in John 19, verse 25. This is Jesus already on the cross. And here's what it says. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. There's at least three Marys there. Okay, 3 Marys there. But Mary is watching her son die for the sins of the world, for sins he never committed. She's watching her innocent baby boy. And I say baby because in a mother's eyes, that son is always going to be your baby, no matter how old they get. She's watching her baby boy being slaughtered for the sins of the world on this cross. He ain't done nothing. Do you think Mary did not want to see her son Jesus grow up and get married and have kids? Do you think that she could ever see herself burying her own son? No, she could never see that. But this is what she had to face. This is the sacrifice that Mary had to endure. Not just for her sake, but for the sake of the world. Because if Jesus had not died, we would not have any salvation. Number 1, all 3 mothers only had their sons for a short time, a very short time. They were robbed of many of the advantages, many of the pleasures that we get with our own children, because we get to see them have a full life. These 3 mothers, they didn't see that. They did not get a chance to see that. They had a major sacrifice to endure. Number 2, all 3 mothers had faith in God that God would do things with their sons that they themselves could not accomplish. The mothers themselves could not accomplish the things that God ended up doing with these 3 sons. Moses, we know, freed all of Israel from slavery. Okay? Samuel guided Israel from falling into sin. Israel always had a prophet to guide them through temptation. All right? Number 3, Jesus himself. This was a son that saved everyone from their sins if we believe in him. And we see that in John 3:16. So all three mothers knew love, they knew pain, but they knew great sacrifice too. So on this Mother's Day special, I want to commend every mother out there for your motherhood. Okay? We know that this is a difficult task to undertake. It is a labor of love. But I'm also going to challenge each and every mother out there. Give your children to God. Raise them to know who their Lord and Savior is. Raise them to know who their Lord and Savior is and to love their Lord and Savior. Because God can do things with your sons, with your daughters, that you and I can't even fathom. Can't even fathom what they can do with God in their heart. That's my challenge. I want to thank all of you for joining me today for this Mother's Day special. Stay tuned for the next video.